So what is one workforce decision that companies are going to stop making in spreadsheets?
I'll tell you, my first thing that came to mind is like all of them.
Yeah, right.
Like spreadsheets are fragile.
Yeah.
Spreadsheets don't have all the data you need to make decisions. When our team at Zapier, for example, is trying to make decisions about like how to allocate talent across the organization, we're not just looking at org charts or hiring plans, right? We're looking at sentiment data, skills data, and so on. And so when you're trying to make high value decisions with people data, the spreadsheet breaks down really fast.
It's a multidimensional decision, and like spreadsheets were built for numbers. They were built for math, right? And math is one piece of a headcount decision, but there's so many more dynamics when you're talking about people decisions that go into them.
That's right.
The last few years been a really, really interesting time, really exciting time at Zapier as well. But what is a workforce decision that's become a lot harder for leaders in the last few years?
Well, I would tell you it's actually all about the tempo of planning. And by tempo, I mean like the frequency.
Right.
Right. For companies that a few years ago maybe did staffing plans every year or even every 6 months, like that is for many of our organizations, Zapier included, like way too infrequent at this point, given the pace of change. So what we like to say is we need our business to operate, closer to the tempo at which the world is changing around us. And of course, then we want our tools to be able to enable us to match that pace.
Yeah. I feel like if you think about the velocity that like software has changed in terms of like deployment and shipping models, the way we shape our org has to like reflect that type of velocity. Like once a year doesn't make any sense. Like the org is constantly changing just as our products are constantly changing.
Well, right. Well, and the tools can enable Orga in the way there too, Ian, as you know, because, if the work of getting the data assembled to make some of these decisions, if that lift is really high, then the inertia, you have an inertia problem. If you wonder like, well, why don't organizations do this type of, workforce planning more dynamically? Well, there are reasons for that. People can appreciate the value of that. And very few organizations do it more frequently than once or twice a year. And a lot of it comes down to just like all of the prep work that's required to make good decisions.
Yeah, if you can reduce all the friction that goes into making the decisions, that's what will really set you up. And like, think about like AI and tooling, a big part of it is just reducing friction and barriers.
Yep. I think it also has a lot to do with giving more people the ability to use those data. So even for a people team or an executive team, traditionally getting a lot of this data in order to make good decisions is a lot of work. Forget about, enabling an engineering manager or a director, to be able to do that, even just in preparation to push their thinking or scenario plan or what have you. So that's the second thing that I'm really excited about is one is for the traditional players, it's easier to get to the table and make decisions, but it also expands the range of people who both from a lift required and ease of use perspective can actually be involved.
Yeah. I mean, the hardest role in an organization is that middle manager who's trying to plan a team. If you're a director, maybe managing, 40 engineers or something, you're managing an org, but you may not have the level of visibility of everything. If the decision-making can be pushed down the org chart, that's a really powerful thing.
That's right. And again, leaders closer to the front have a lot of context that doesn't always show up in our data layer anyway, but is very important for making good decisions, or if not always changing the decisions around a staffing plan or whatever the case may be, certainly in thinking through the implementation.
Yeah, that's right. So how is workforce planning changing inside your organization right now?
So I will also just say it's a little bit of a spicy take that I think workforce planning is poorly understood and maybe overwrought. And what I mean by that is, if you ask 10 chief people officers, what is workforce planning? We have 10 different answers.
Right.
But if you really push us just conversationally on what that's all about, there you'll get a very consistent answer, right? Workforce planning is about making sure that our company's most important and costliest resource, our talent, right, is doing the right work at the right time, at the right price point, right? Full stop. That's what it's all about. And so, what's changing with workforce planning at Zapier today? We talked about the tempo. That's the biggest change of all. The second thing that's changing is that because of some of what is now possible with our data, we're able to think about flexing talent across the organization smarter and more frequently than we used to. And that's really important for organizations like ours that are operating in a really dynamic environment. And there's a lot of change. The needs of the organization are shifting faster than I've ever seen it in my career. Outside of just the overall like tempo of planning going up, this notion of talent agility and flexibility is very important. But there too, you want to make data-driven decisions.
Yeah, I hear that over and over again. Like internal mobility has been a topic, forever. But internal mobility feels totally different in a world where skills don't always map to job descriptions or functions in the same way. You might have somebody in a non-technical function who, because of AI tools, can suddenly contribute in a totally different way to product development in a way that wasn't possible previously. And that's happening all around all the orgs that we work with.
That's what we're seeing too.
There's a lot of hype. Full conference has been AI and HR. But where have you actually seen it help leaders?
AI has a couple of superpowers that, whether you point it at talent acquisition or total rewards or people operations, like does seem to really be helping. One is data analysis. Full stop, right?
Totally.
Like our messy human brains are brilliant at some very specific things and just are not naturally good at others. And taking in huge arrays of information and making sense of them in a very structured, objective way is not one of our superpowers. Thankfully, AI is very good at this. So anywhere HR teams are putting AI over well-structured data to answer important questions or solve problems, it's the single biggest place, again, regardless of what part of the HR shop we're talking about, where folks are seeing value right away. The last thing, which is where AI and automation come together, is the ability to like take what you're learning and action on it quickly. And it's not just about like moving data from one place to another. It could also be about like informing very specific audiences of things like dynamically and what have you. So that's the type of thing that is exciting for me as a chief people officer, because it saves my practitioners time so that they can do like the truly strategic work that, is both most motivating for people, but also more value for the business.
You just saw a little bit of ChartHop's AI Pro product being announced yesterday. What did you think? Any thoughts?
Well, Ian, congrats to you and the team. You've been busy.
Yes,
Right.
right.
Zapier's been ChartHop customer for years. And a lot of what we just looked at reflects a lot of creativity, but also like a pretty darn good understanding of like what your customers are really trying to do, especially with AI. So a couple things that stood out to me. One, increasingly because of all the different modules that are in ChartHop now, for like goal setting, engagement, so on, like more of the data that people teams use with leaders to make decisions is all in one place. Plus you have great connectors, right, to port in any additional data. So it's kind of like ChartHop as the place where the data lives and is well organized is the foundation for the insights and the actions. Let's talk about insights. So I just looked at your co-pilot effectively. What do you, it's called?
Ask ChartHop.
It's called Ask ChartHop. Okay, so Ask ChartHop, it's a co-pilot, right, for your leader or your HR practitioner, your finance leader, and so on. To basically be able to query that increasingly rich data layer to solve problems and answer questions, right? Another great AI superpower, right? It's like analyzing data and then also starting to summarize, like, here's what I think is going on here, working with the human to pull out the right insight. And then the last thing I thought was really interesting, very much keyed into here at Zapier, is the actions layer. So being able to take that insight and then do something with it. Like, based on that, let's go ahead and update all this. Or based on that, we're going to deliver this training to specifically like this very specific slice of the workforce. Or based on this, like, we're going to rethink our location strategy for these jobs, that type of thing. And we're going to port that into our existing like action plan for our geolocation strategy. Totally. A lot of flexibility in what you've built at the actions layer, which again, I think is very interesting and very useful. And then last but not least, the ability to repeatably set those out. So it's like every Monday or every quarter, we're going to run these like screens on our workforce, and it's going to deliver like these reports and notify these individuals so that like we never miss an opportunity. AI tools are incredibly important, but again, because humans are still accountable for all the work, it all goes up to people at the end of the day. We absolutely have to have like a talent strategy that maps to the what AI can now do. And we talk specifically about this notion of redesigning the factory. Right. There's so many things about how work happens, even today, even in the highest growth tech companies all over the world. You look at how they work and how orgs are designed and the operations, and some of it isn't that different than than the industrial era.
Sure.
So when we talk about redesigning the factory, we're talking about, not just having great tools, well configured with super clean data layers. We're also talking about like zooming out even a little bit further to think about how the work gets done across, teams, individuals, and
Is this the most exciting time you've been in people?
I mean, I'm having a lot of fun.
Yeah,
I don't know. What are you hearing from my peers?
me too. It's an exciting time when you have a lot of things being just reimagined and transformed. And a lot of the fundamentals of how to design a great organization, how to create a great culture, how to like maintain top talent don't change. But we've got a real moment of a lot of things, a lot of opportunities, and that's exciting.
I'm with you. I mean, Ian, this as a leader and a founder, when things are changing quickly, everything you just said, leadership, talent, and culture, they become way more important, not less, even with AI.
Well, thank you so much, Brandon. This was really awesome.
It was a blast.